The Declaration of Independence, which is celebrated now, was at the time an act of treason. To declare freedom is treason to the forces of tyranny, to the forces of the enemy. The Declaration of Independence was finished at the beginning of July, was signed on July 4th, 1776, which would become known as Independence Day. Adams would become the second president of the United States. Jefferson would become the third president of the United States. The two, in that subsequent time, would become bitter political enemies. Bitter enemies. But later, wouldn't speak to it, but later in life, when they both were old, they began writing each other, corresponding in letters. And they corresponded for years as friends. Adam would die at the age of 90 in 1826. The year he died was the anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, the 50th anniversary. And he would die on July 4th, the exact 50th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration. His last words in Massachusetts, I believe his last words were reported to have been, "Thomas Jefferson still survives." But in Virginia, Thomas Jefferson also died on the same day, July 4th, the 50th anniversary. The two of them who signed it died on the same day. The Declaration began when, in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind require that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. In other words, it is warranted that we tell you why we are separating from Great Britain. Then came some of the most famous words in American history and in the English language, which are these. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, first note, which if you picked up on it, if you put it together chronologically, it's a little striking, because you would think that the colonists declared independence and then Britain came and there was a war. That's not what happened. There already was a war, and there was no Declaration of Independence. They were in a war, and they had not said they would become so you're fighting Britain, but they're still part of the British Empire, and they haven't said they're not going to be part. But then, after about a year, is when they declare independence, already at war. Now, why did they do it? They saw they were part of a system that they didn't want to be part of anymore. They had to break their identity from Great Britain. They had to say, we're not British anymore. They had to come to the point that they said, this is not worth it anymore. We're dependent. They saw it as unhealthy, as something that was not something they should be part of. It was harmful. We don't see this as a good thing anymore, a right thing anymore, or a healthy thing anymore. It's detrimental, our relationship with Britain. Now, it doesn't matter if you are American citizen or not. This has everything to do with you, because we also become joined to things that are not good, entangled, dependent, bound, and the scripture says, cast off that sin that so easily entangles you. Jesus said, I tell you, everyone who sins is a slave to sin. Everyone. That's a blanket statement. Everybody who sins is a slave of sin. That means if you sin, and I'm not going to ask for hands, but if I did, every hand would have to go up unless you're lying, and that's a sin, so then you'd have to put it up. What else led to that day of independence? And this is called Independence Day. They realized the price, the cost, and came to the point of saying the cost of being with Britain is not worth it. The price is not worth it. The tax is not worth it. So with sin, with bondage, with a habit, if you would be free of that thing, or that unhealthy thing, or whatever that thing is, you have to come to the point where you realize it's not worth it. The cost of that sin in your life is not worth it. What blessing will I not know? Is that price worth doing it? The colonists rebelled against being taxed. Sin also taxes you. Sin is very taxing in the end. Bondage will tax you. It'll tax your time, tax your energy, tax your peace, tax your well-being. They called that, it's interesting, they called the act that finally led to the Continental Congress, which led to the revolution, they called the Intolerable Acts. The name itself gives it away. They called it the intolerable thing, meaning that we cannot tolerate it. That's what led to the Congress that led to the revolution. The intolerable. So with sin, so with bondage, so with freedom, you won't be free of that sin until it becomes intolerable to you. You'll stay in it as long as you can tolerate it, you'll stay in it. Until you find it to be an intolerable thing. This is not tolerable anymore in my life. It's not acceptable for my life anymore. I cannot tolerate it. I cannot accept it for my life. In Psalm 97, verse 10, it says, let those who love the Lord hate evil. It doesn't say let those who love the Lord dislike evil, but hate evil. Romans 12:9 says, hate what is evil. Love what is good, hate what is evil. Not be unhappy about evil, but hate it. Now, there's no hate of people allowed in the new covenant. But there is hate of evil totally. In fact, you can't have one without the other. If you love someone, you hate evil. If you love the Jewish people, you hate Nazism. If you love a person, you hate the disease. You have to. If you don't hate the disease, you don't love the person. So that's the key. You may not be, same with your life. It's not just about others. It's about your life too. You're not supposed to hate you, who God made in his image, but you are supposed to hate your sin. You may not be happy about your sin. You may be grieved about it. You may be sick of it. But until you hate it, it's still going to be there. Until you hate that habit, until you abhor that indulgence. This is horrible. It's disgusting. It's ugly. Has no place. It's toxic. Until you despise it, you won't be free of it as God would have you to be. And the other thing with those people, what they did in Philadelphia 240 years ago, was according to the status quo, it was not only an act of rebellion to sign that paper, it was an act of treason. And they knew it. If they lost the war, those who wrote the Declaration, maybe that's why Jefferson didn't want to write it, would be executed. So Benjamin Franklin said, let us all hang together, or we shall all surely hang separately. The Declaration of Independence, which is celebrated now, was at the time an act of treason. To declare freedom is treason to the forces of tyranny, to the forces of the enemy. It's treason. And so the great price they had to go. They knew there was a great price to it. If you look at the last words of the Declaration, you see it there. It says, and for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. They pledged their life. In other words, we know what this means. We know what that means, that if this doesn't go, we are dead. We lose everything. And so we are pledging everything. Knowing the price of those, we sign this, it's all out now. No return, moment of no return. They came to that absolute point of saying, no matter what, we're out of the old now. No matter what, we're out of that bondage. We're free now. We fight as free people. We live as free people. We win as free people, or we lose, or we die as free people, but we're free people. Live or die, we do so as free people. And so that was for political freedom. We are to live for a greater freedom than that. Spiritual freedom, total freedom. Now, you may have been fighting that bondage in your life, or that that unhealthy thing or that unclean thing, fighting that thing just as they were, maybe thoughts, whatever it is, you must fight. That is part of it. Not everything happens, there are stories where people just pray and like that, something's gone from their life. But most of the time, it's not like that. Most of the time, God chooses that we have to choose for him. We have to choose against that sin. We have to choose against that thing. So you do have to fight. And you will have fights where you are more victorious. You'll have times when it's less victorious, but keep fighting, you win. They didn't just fight, though. They did more. And the same with us. You have to get to that point, not just of fighting that thing, resisting that thing, but you have to get to the point of the declaration, the point of independence. The Hebrews were slaves in Egypt, but they had to come to the point, they had to come to their Independence Day. Their Independence Day, happened a long time before America existed, was called Passover. That's when they broke free of Egypt. And they did so before they saw the freedom. They declared themselves free before they saw the freedom. On Passover, they were declaring their independence. We are no longer of Egypt. What they did separated them from Egypt. Once they did it by the command of God, not by the command of Pharaoh, they were no longer of Egypt when they did it. But they didn't see the victory or the freedom until it happened. So they first declared it, the declaration, by doing what they did. They had to cross that line, and throughout the Bible, people of God have to cross that line and before they see the victory. Gideon, before he could become the hero he was called to be, he had to tear down the idol, or he had to go against that idol in his own backyard to declare he is not of that anymore. He's independent of that. The rebellion that brought freedom to Israel in the days of Antiochus Epiphanes began with one act, one declaration, in a sense of saying, I am not of this anymore, independence by Mattathias. Esther had to come to that point in her life when she went into the presence of Ahasuerus because of God. When she told the king, in effect, that she's a child of Israel, she went against the law. That was her declaration. Those of the declaration saying, pledging our sacred honor, is like what Esther, she said, if I perish, I perish. I'm crossing the line now. If you want to be free, you have to cross that line. That's what was needed for Esther to be free. That was her declaration of independence in every way. And in Hanukkah, that same thing happened in the sense that when they made the act of saying, I'm no longer of this, I'm not following this thing, they were saying that's it, no matter what, even if it means my life, I am free, no matter what. Messiah said, everyone who sins is a slave to sin. But if the Son has set you free, that's the second part. Everyone who sins is a slave of sin, but if the Son has set you free, you are free indeed. So it is written, put off the old self, put on the new self. It is also written, sin shall not be master over you. Do not therefore submit again to a yoke of slavery, for it was for freedom that Messiah has set you free. Do not submit again to a yoke of slavery. You are free. So the great people of God, all had to come to that place of declaring their independence from sin, from evil, from an evil system, their independence from the flesh, from the independence from the devil, drawing a line in the sand. In each case, they had to proclaim their freedom before they saw their freedom. In each case, they had to declare it, just as with the children of Israel on Passover. They had to put the blood of the lamb on the door. Now in Israel, or actually Israel, you would think that's one thing, but in Egypt, that was blasphemy, because a lamb was a god. That was blasphemy. That was their act of leaving Egypt. Once they put the blood of the lamb on the door, they were saying, we are leaving Egypt. We are not of the old anymore. It was the blood of the lamb that declared their freedom. And our faith begins with what? Passover, same day, when Messiah, the Passover lamb, died on that cross. The blood of the lamb. It's that same blood that gives you the power of freedom from any bondage, from that bondage and any bondage, from that sin and any sin. Our faith, our Independence Day is that. Passover, Messiah. So what's your England? What's your Great Britain? What sin is it that entangles you still? What bondage is it that's still binding you? What fear still oppresses your life? What obstacle is still hindering you? What habit still has a hold on you? What behavior? What circumstance? What indulgence? What obstacle? What is your England? What is your Great Britain? You don't have to be bound by it. You don't have to be bound by it forever. You don't have to be mastered by it. You don't have to be hindered by it, because God said you're a child not of the world but of God. Therefore you are not a slave, you are free. Do not be bound by any sin. Do not be mastered. Master it. First thing, stop identifying with it. Stop letting it be part of your identity. It is not who you are. It's not who God created you to be. It might have been the old, but you're not the old anymore. You are of the new. You've put on the new now. Putting on the new is a choice, saying, I am not the old. That is not me anymore. I am the new, which is created in God. It is not, the new is not a slave of sin. The new me is not a slave of sin. So put that, it's not part of me. Whatever that thing is, it may have been, but it's not part of me now. It's not part of who I am. That is not my future. You are not of that bondage. You don't have to be. It doesn't have to be part of your life. You can live a life, a future free of that bondage. Fight the good fight against it, which begins with a fight of faith. Today, make your declaration. Today, you're Thomas Jefferson. Make your declaration of independence. That you are not of it anymore. You are not bound by it. You're not under it. You're not stuck with it. Make your proclamation of freedom today. Make it firm. Make it absolute. Make it once and for all. If you want to write it out, write it out. I am not bound by this sin anymore. I am not bound by this fear anymore. I am not a slave. I am a child of God. I am not bound by it. And whether I win some battles or lose some, I'm going to keep fighting until that comes about, because I am not under this anymore. You want to write it out? You want to be eloquent? When in the course of human events it becomes necessary to dissolve the bands which have connected me to this bondage, well, it has become necessary. And the when is now in the course of your life, that you dissolve the bonds that connected you to that thing, sin, bond. Throw off that sin, it says, that so easily entangles it. The Bible knows, God knows. That's why it says so easily. He knows you deal with it. It says so easily, but you also have the power to throw it off. Throw off that rut, that thing that's not, that thing you do continuously, and it's not helping you. You can write it out, or you can say, I, my name, this day, declare my independence. Declare my independence from specifically this sin, from that indulgence. I declare I am not anymore a slave in bondage to pornography, to lust, to anger, to unforgiveness, to jealousy, to gossip, to whatever, to that substance anymore. By the power of God, by the blood of Messiah, the Lamb of Passover, I am free from Egypt. I am no longer bound by it. It has no power. It has no authority. That's what they were saying when they wrote that. They say there are laws that are higher than kings, therefore they have no authority because God is higher than kings. So you have to say, God is higher than sin. God has authority. That sin has no authority anymore. God has the authority, and God's word says, I'm free. The devil has no legitimate authority. So therefore he has no authority. I don't go by that anymore. I go by God. I will not listen to that voice anymore. I won't live under that yoke anymore because it has no authority. Why did I even give myself in? Why? Because I didn't realize it. I realized there's no authority there. God has endowed me with a life of salvation. It says you are called to walk in liberty. They call themselves the sons of liberty. But we, those who are children of God, are the true children of liberty. Life. He gave me life of salvation, liberty of the children of God, and the pursuit of God and the joy of the Holy Spirit. If the Son has set me free, I am free indeed. Sin shall not be master over me. I will master it by the authority of God. I will not submit again to a yoke of slavery, because it was for freedom that Messiah set me free. And I am free, and I will fight the fight. I will not bow down to Baal or give in to Pharaoh or say or do what the enemy wants me to do anymore. I will run the good race. I will fight the good fight no matter what happens. From this moment on, I am free.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Cahn, and I hope you were blessed with the video. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and tap the bell icon so you're notified every time a new video is posted. Feel free to share your reactions with your comments and how you were blessed, and share this video with your friends. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.